See, okay. I want to talk about a problem, right? Not a problem that I have, but a problem that's just kind of engraved into the world. And it's a problem with problems. The very idea of a problem. What is a problem? Right, I'm going to say that word so much it's going to sound weird by the end of this. But what is a problem? Right? A problem is somebody being discontented with something to the point that they decide to make it other people's, to get other people involved. To involve other individuals in something that they feel passionate about because they can't resolve the issue themselves, or they feel that they can't resolve the issue themselves, right? That's what's typically considered a problem in society. So, why do we have these problems, right? Well, ultimately there's a severe lack of understanding between a lot of individuals, and that can lead to problems. There can also be an extreme mistrust between individuals. That can lead to problems. And it's typically in how people react. Now, the interesting thing about how people react to things is that everybody gets to choose their reaction, right? Everybody gets to choose their reaction. So, take Undertale as a game, for example, right? In that game, you get a choice, right? You get to make the choice of whether you want to spare or kill. And that's a pretty solid choice to have to make for a video game environment. But the meta message of that is that we have consequences to our actions. And those consequences affect others around us. So ultimately, it's like when we look at problems as the problem, it starts to paint a bigger picture. Because we create problems for the sake of finding solutions. We decide things are problems for the sake of finding solutions. But not every problem needs a solution. Not every bad thing needs to be made good. Not every negative needs to be turned positive if it's providing good ultimately, right? So okay. Let's do an example here. Let's take Mr. Beast, for example. He is an influencer that I think makes for fantastic argument on this front, and that's the fact that he has done so much good for this world with the money that he has. He has influenced so many others to do good with their influence and with their money, and he has helped so many thousands, if not millions of people at this point. And yet, he's got some allegations going against him. He's got some toxic traits. He's got some negatives. And those are things that can be worked on, right? These are problems that people have seen with this individual. But ultimately, it's problems that have solutions and that can be solved, ultimately. But at the same time, do they really need to be? How many of these things are so bad that they're worth warranting such a toxic reaction from everybody, right? And I'm not saying the things that he's done haven't been bad. Believe me, that's not what I'm saying at all. I'm just saying when it comes to certain actions, if it means creating the person that can ultimately do more good than evil, then how much harm is there in it, really? Now, that brings me to my next point, which is petty problems, right? Now, pettiness is a term that gets thrown around a lot, but I think ultimately it just refers to a small problem. A problem that is so minuscule that most wouldn't consider it concerning, right? So take a problem in a video game, for example, okay? Now, this is not me referring to video games as petty by any means, or futile, or anything like that. In fact, far from it. Because, see, there's a certain attitude that can be had toward video games that kind of solidifies them as a video game, while also allowing the experience to kind of overtake you as that suspension of disbelief sets in, right? So, like, at the same time, when we have a problem in one of these games, in one of these virtual environments, in one of these dreams, if you will, it helps to remember the reality of the situation and to be able to reignite with your disbelief at a moment's notice when necessary. Right, especially for games that are rage-inducing like Geometry Dash or Fortnite. Right, because these games can definitely take a toll on your mental health if you allow them to. But that's the biggest thing when it comes to problems, is that we allow problems to be a problem in the first place. And that's interesting, because when you think about it, problems wouldn't be problems if we just decided that they didn't matter. And that's the ultimate piece of wisdom that I want to share with this, is the whole idea that problems really don't need to be problems if they don't pertain to much, if they don't, like, amount to a greater picture that's ultimately going to cause some sort of massive outflux, you know? It's like, if there's no problem with the problem, then what's the problem? You know what I mean? If there's no problem with the problem, then what's the problem? And again, people like to create problems, because it's just in our nature as humans to be toxic and negative. But there's a lot to be said for creating problems and then finding solutions to those problems. Because the finding solutions part is just as interesting as the creating problems, in the fact that finding solutions, everybody has different solutions to their problems, right? And that's fine, because we all come from different backgrounds, we all have different, good and bad traits, we all, we're all human, to say the least. And so, when it comes down to it, finding the solutions to problems tends to be one of the biggest sort of challenges, and one of the biggest sort of cataclysts of more problems between people. Because there's this thing that my dad taught me about called ARC, and I would like to go more in depth into it in another video, but to summarize, what that means is affinity, reality, communication. And ARC is considered one of the highest regarded means of having a healthy relationship with another being, with another person, right? And what does that mean? ARC, affinity, reality, communication. Well, the idea is that both parties have to project ARC onto each other in order to have that strong relationship. So each party has to have affinity for one another, each of them has to understand the other's reality, and they have to be able to communicate well with one another. And if all three of those points can be hit, that's what causes a good relationship to form. Now, granted, there can be two of these points present, and they cause the third one to form, which is really nice. So, for example, if you have good communication and an understanding of the other person's reality, your affinity for them is going to grow. If you have a high affinity for somebody, and you understand their reality well, communication is going to be really easy. So on and so forth. So, my point with that, right, getting back to the topic of finding solutions to problems, is that there's a lot of misunderstanding between a lot of people. And I think the big challenge with that misunderstanding is that it causes more problems than it finds solutions. Because a lot of people will have two conflicting, opposing worldviews, right, where one person believes in side A and the other person believes in side B. Whether you want to relate this to politics or not is on you, that's whatever. But, politics, sports, this is just kind of relative to human nature, right? Especially with picking teams for things. We as humans love to pick teams. And so, because of that, it can cause a lot of conflict in our conversation and in our, trying to find solutions to problems. So, because of that, that's one of the biggest things that we have to focus on understanding between each other as humans, is the understanding of each other's worldviews and having that ARC between each other. right? Because if we can focus on having more of that ARC, that's what's going to allow us to have more of an understanding between each other. And as we gain an affinity for each other and understand each other's realities better, it'll allow everybody to communicate things a lot better. And that's the point that I want to make with that, is the fact that having that ARC really allows for better communication, or even just having AR allows for a much better C out of the situation. And I think that's something that a lot more people need, is better communication. Because there is such lackluster communication in the world nowadays. And it's a challenge for a lot of people, especially myself, especially with so much social anxiety in the world, and just anxiety in general. It really kind of paints a bigger picture of the fact that we're all so similar, yet so different at the same time. So, regardless of that, I do hope you enjoyed this video. If you did, please be sure to like and subscribe, and I will catch you in the next one. See ya!